think life matters? Do you think you have an immortal soul with intrinsic value to it, that the quality of your soul will determine whether you can interface with each other, with other people, whether you can value your relationships with them? Or do you think that society has reached a point of decay, vulgarity, base sin and evil, where nothing really matters anymore? In short, how do you feel about nihilism? This past week, I read a rather famous book, you might say, The Stranger by Albert Camus, obviously an English translation of this Frenchman's work. And this book won the Nobel Prize a couple decades ago. The author led a rather interesting life. I think the most notable thing would be that, in my opinion anyways, he operated one of the underground newspapers during the Nazi occupation of France, which is pretty cool. And the story is obviously set in France, sometime probably in the 60s. It's a little ambiguous. I'll read the About the Author page at the end, I think, because it'll give you something to think about, because this is a recommendation from me. I actually really enjoyed this, and part of it is because it's only 120 pages or so. This is definitely an easy weekend read. In the literal sense of, is it easy to read? Stylistically, it is almost devoid of emotion, which in a lesser author would imply that they don't know what they're doing, that they aren't able to reach out and engage the reader. But usually even like a bad author has a few points where they're trying to make you feel something, whereas The Stranger, the entire thing is written from the perspective of a guy saturated by nihilism, where nothing matters except the discomforts of his body, basically, the issues of the flesh. Those are the only things that come across as like real emotions for him, and that is presented in the prose of the novel, which makes it wrap all the way around like a horseshoe, basically, of, so bad it actually becomes really good style, in my opinion. And I think this particular translator, which, by the way, this is like the cheap Amazon translations, hopefully good. I enjoyed it. It keeps the style of the writing very detached. It's very much like an impassive observer seeing the things in the story happen as though they're happening to someone else, even though he's the narrator. It's his life. These are the people he surrounds himself with, that he lives next to, that he gives advice to and he helps, that he shoots on a beach, that he goes to jail and gets condemned for, and so on. But it's all observed almost psychopathically. I think if you were to actually get your hands on this person under modern setting, you actually had a psychologist talk with them, they'd probably be diagnosed with either psychopathy or sociopathy. But I would say that it's almost a learned behavior in this character, and not actually the genuine article of the mental illness that you're thinking of. Because what the novel is essentially doing is using the story as an art form to argue the idea, to make you consider some of the ideas and motivations of why someone would end up very nihilistic. And I would say, does it, I don't want to say convincingly, because I'm not a nihilist, but I do enjoy indulging ideas like that. But it is a very sympathetic portrayal of it. Driven by the circumstances of his life that he has put himself into, where over the years, basically, you can see that the meaning has just seeped out of this man's life. Like I said earlier, until he's left with nothing is essentially real to him except the discomforts of his body. It's not like he's crazy, it's not like he's irrational. He actually shows that he understands everything that's going on. He just struggles to articulate the values of things, especially when he's in conversations, which I think is what makes this such a strong story and gives you stuff to think about as you read through it. Now, I think at this one you may be thinking that I'm probably padding for time, because as I mentioned, it's only 120 pages. Like, you can easily finish this in a day if you can tolerate that much meaninglessness, at times a violent refutation of people trying to force the protagonist into seeing value in things, and he doesn't see it himself. So it can be a bit of a tough book. It's not like you're going to go off singing and dancing after you finish the book, but that doesn't mean it's a bad book. I actually liked it quite a bit. And yeah, this is a recommendation. So as I said at the beginning, I do want to read the about the author from the back of the book, because if my pitch so far hasn't convinced you, maybe this will. Albert Camus, son of a working-class family, was born in Algeria in 1913. He spent the early years of his life in North Africa, where he worked at various jobs in the weather bureau, in an automobile accessory firm, in a shipping company to help pay for his courses at the University of Algiers. He then turned to journalism as a career. His report on the unhappy state of the Muslims in the Kabylie region aroused the Algerian government to action and brought him public notice. From 1935 to 1938, he ran the Théâtre de l'Équipe, a theatrical company that produced plays by Malraux, Gide, Synge, Dostoevsky, and others. During World War II, he was one of the leading writers of the French Resistance and editor of Combat, then an important underground newspaper. Camus was always very active in the theater, and several of his plays have been published and produced. His fiction, including The Stranger, The Plague, The Fall, and Exile in the Kingdom, his philosophical essays, The Myth of Sisyphus and The Rebel, and his plays have assured his preeminent position in modern French letters. In 1957, Camus was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. His sudden death on January 4th, 1960, cut short the career of one of the most important literary figures of the Western world when he was at the very summit of his powers. You may hear me say that awards are meaningless, that they're a complete waste, that they're biased, and it's nepotism from the judges. That is my current opinion of modern awards. In the 50s, getting the Nobel Prize for Literature, I think this was well deserved. And it is a good piece of the Western literary canon that, like I said, it's not a long read. It's not going to take you a long time. And I think you'll get a lot out of it if you choose to pick up a copy and read it. And highly recommend, 5 out of 5. That said, please drop a like if you enjoyed this. If I've been able to recommend you some good books or maybe steer you away from other books, let me know in the comments below what you think of French translation literature. If there's another author that you think I should check out, let me know down below. I'm always on the lookout for more books to pick up. And subscribe if you enjoy the content. Cheers.